Do. How you like that new intro, huh?
Thank you for coming. We've had a good night. Our time is up, and thank you. There's been an excellent
See you
show.
next time.
Could it be longer, Bruce? Could you have made it longer?
We've been waiting for a new intro for so long, man, and finally I was doing it while Ryan came into the room. I'd go like, hold on, I'm almost done.
Sounded good. It sounded good.
Yeah.
We can't we can't just give you accolades, Bruce. We're not going to do that.
No, don't do that.
We're gonna bitch and moan about
You guys can't even read your own email. So
what's an email?
Yeah, there's a thing called email and messages. I've been messaging you guys all weekend. I get the cold shoulder, but
well, Jason and me have been talking back and forth all day. I mean, we don't have a problem. It's just we don't see yours. They always go to spam or trash or something.
Bruce, if you're not sending them by courier or pigeon, we don't see them.
That's right.
Not sure they can happen. Hey, welcome to the Weather Report here on a Sunday night early edition. We're here at it's 5:00 on my side of town, and it's 7:00 in Ken and Jason's part of town, and 8:00 in Ryan, our guest, Ryan Crim, family doc and life coach. And we want to welcome here to the Weather Report. Thank you for your time, brother. How you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for having me on. I'm excited to be here. So thank you.
Yeah, you're a part of the leverage coaching group through Jason Stapleton.
Nice.
Most of us met here on the Nomad Network, and Ryan, were you as far back as the Nomad Network, or did you come in during leverage?
No, I was on the Nomad Network, and then he sort of rearranged things, and that ended and went into the new thing. So yeah,
you got in right at the end, right?
Yeah, towards the end of it.
Yeah, well, sit back and feel comfortable, man, because we all kind of talk over each other, and we try to stay on track and everything. And Jason won't say much, so we're really happy that he's here. But he usually doesn't say much. And then Ken up there, he'll probably try to take over the show a little bit because that's what he does.
I don't need to try, Bruce. That'll just happen. And we've got a medical doctor guy, and I have a wife that is a medical mystery. And yeah, I'll have a million questions.
Sure.
There we go.
So I do have just stop, Bruce. Stop.
Go ahead.
Stop. Okay. I do have a question. Do you want to be referred to as doctor or by your first name?
You can call me whatever.
Oh, God. You are
just don't call me late for dinner, right?
You are probably one of the coolest doctors ever now. Okay.
There we go.
You have my respect.
Now we have a cool doctor here.
Can we call you doc? Can we call you doctor whatever?
You can call me doctor whatever. I don't care.
Right.
I don't care.
So the only reason why I asked that is because I worked in the medical field in the admin side for a good 17 years in dealing with a lot of doctors. And the stigma the doctors kind of get. They're kind of stuck up. But every once in a while, you do meet a really cool doctor, and you seem like a cool one who just wants to be called, doesn't care what.
Yeah,
so
doesn't matter.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, it's I don't know. It's a gift to be a physician, so I'm lucky to have been able to. So I don't care what my patients call me either. They
Nice.
curse on here, Bruce.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it right now. And just Ryan, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, how you got to be a doctor, how you got to be in this group of knuckleheads that we have surrounding you here on the screen, and what we're going to talk about tonight. Go ahead and give your intro.
Yeah, sure. So I've been a family physician for about a quarter century now. Grew up in Pennsylvania, near Reading, on a Christmas tree farm, and my dad was also a school teacher, and then he worked high steel in the summers to help make ends meet. And so learned about a lot of hard work from him, and then really didn't know what I wanted to do. I was believe it or not, a philosophy major in college, mostly focusing on bioethics. And I also played soccer, and I blew out my knee. And doctor who took care of me was a very cool doctor, and I was like, I want to do this. So that sort of led me in the path of medicine, and been doing it seems like forever now. So
Right
yeah.
on, man. Right on. So, how long did it take you to get through medical school? I hear that medical school is quite an endeavor to take on as a doctor would. I mean, I have a couple of doctors in my family, and never really got a straight answer. I know that they were in school for a long time. Residency takes a while and all that stuff. And then also, do you have a private practice?
So I'm part of a hospital group here in Pennsylvania. So I do have my own practice, where I'm the what they call a lead physician there. So it's me, and then we have another part-time doc, and we have a nurse practitioner as well. Most Now I'm thinking about, you asked me about medical school. So medical school is 4 years after college, and residency for family medicine is 3 years. So that's 7 years after 4 years of college. But the training has changed. I think I talked a little bit about this on some other areas, but like when we went through, there's a book, if you've never seen it, it's worth a read. It's called House of God, and it sort of talks about how you survive getting through your residency. But where we did residency was tough. I mean, certainly some rotations were easier than others, but our OB rotation, we were 36 hours on and 12 off for 2 months straight. When we were I went to residency in Wake Forest, in North Carolina. And while we were down there, a hurricane came through, and I think we spent an entire week in the hospital, averaging, I don't know, maybe 2 to 4 hours of sleep at night, sometimes less, just because we were the only hospital in North Carolina that was open to, nobody could fly because of the hurricane, but we were the only hospital open to on-ground trauma. So it was a exciting time. Now those
Wow.
those rules have changed now, because there was a big case in New York where a resident fell asleep driving home and sadly killed someone. And so they really took a look at the rules. And so I think it's easier now. I mean, in medical I could tell 100 different stories about medical school. And, I did time, that was in DC for me, and worked at the VA at Bethesda Naval, Georgetown. So always fascinating stuff there.
Yeah, well, since we just went through this North Carolina hurricane, and that took out Asheville and all the communities, north, south, east, and west of it. What are they experiencing right now in those hospitals right now? So you said that you were the only hospital there in North Carolina during the hospital that you were in, but what are they experiencing right now?
Well, I can't speak directly, but I'm sure like all of the doctors are probably in the hospital, as well as the nurses and support staff, doing everything they possibly can to help people. So it's probably very little sleep and very long hours. I would imagine. Probably it's settled down a little bit by now. But just in the initial when everything was chaos, they probably weren't getting too much. But I imagine it's pretty overwhelming right now.
Yeah, I would imagine that just getting to the hospital, if you were off duty or anything like that, especially with the way Asheville and the surrounding areas was impacted, that travel to getting anywhere in that area was probably close to impossible. So you didn't have any. All you had was the medical staff that was at the hospital at that time until you can get some other support in there. So it had to be a pretty hurried and fast driving kind of action there. So yeah, I couldn't even imagine.
Yeah, they might have done. And I don't know for this, but I know if we're going to have a bad storm here in Pennsylvania, sometimes we'll just have people stay at the hospital. Several years ago, my wife was on for the ER, and she just stayed during the whole storm. They couldn't travel. The roads were mostly shut down. So usually who's ever there just stays and sleeps in the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah, man, it was a pretty interesting situation. I had a lot of questions about that because, there's all kinds of information out there on the internet about, what's going on, what's not going on, what FEMA's doing, what FEMA's not doing. We got a lot of people that are on the ground that are saying there's all kinds of hyperbole that's going on. And it's good to have a doctor on that could kind of set people straight and going like, sometimes things are okay and it just takes a while for things to get rolling. And I'm glad that you're there, that the doctors are there to take care of the situations as much as they can. So that's where we're at. So you let it. So I tuned into your John Odermatt interview that you had there. You did medical ethics and stuff like that. You've got a lot of things that you've done in your life. You're doing some interesting stuff, and one of the most interesting things that I think that I've listened to was your support that you did in Haiti. And I'm really interested in how you were there. Were you there right after the earthquake? Were you there before the earthquake? When did your missionary start there
So
in
2012. So it was the year after the year two. I'm trying to remember 2010. So 2 years after the earthquake hit, I went to a conference, a medical conference, and there was a team of doctors that had gone in and they explained what they did. They're very amazing group of physicians that went in. So I was like, I need to go. And I learned a lot about mission work and stuff and what works and what doesn't work and how to actually do mission work. And there's stages of things. So after disaster, right, there's always an immediate need, whether that's for food, water, clean drinking water, or other supplies. But then sort of as the conditions sort of settle down, it's how you deal with what comes after, right? And when you're doing mission work, you really have to be aware of what is and what is not sustainable, and whether you're actually doing good or you're causing harm, because there are some things that certain groups do that really don't create independence, right? So the goal is, one of the knocks on Haiti is like, okay, there's been missions there for 50 years now. Why isn't it any better? And so some of that is probably based on how some of that mission work was run versus what me and others are trying to do now is a little bit different.
So,
I'll give
yeah,
I'll give an
go ahead.
example. Yeah, so like all right, you need clean drinking water, right? These people don't have wells, they don't have water, they don't have access. So you go in, hey, we're going to dig you a well. So you dig a well. Well, you just put out of work all the people that brought clean drinking water to that village or that town. Or let's say, all right, clothes are a great thing. You got old clothes, you're going to put them in a box, donate them, they'll go to Africa or Haiti or wherever else. Well, you just put out of work everybody whose job it was in Haiti to make clothes. So
Right.
things like that, right?
Right.
So you're really creating dependence and you're decreasing jobs and opportunities for the people on the ground to actually better themselves or get a leg up.
So I guess the question that I was going to ask is, when you went over to Haiti, of course they had hospitals in Haiti. I'm not, we're not thinking that this is a caveman society, that where they had, everything's in rock huts and stuff like that. So,
Right.
but the hospitals were, you said you've been there a year after the earthquake. Were the hospitals up and running? Were they, or was there a lot of damage to the infrastructure there as far as hospitals are concerned? And what are we looking at? What does that look like when you go into an area a year after an earthquake?
So it was a mess. The roads were a mess. They were still down. The presidential palace was still a mess. And it was hard to travel from place to place. As I've been there, the last time I went, just because prior to quote elections and increasing gang violence, was in 2018. So I haven't been on ground in country since 2018, but we continue to support our friends down there. But right afterwards, it's very challenging. Supplies were hard to come by, and supplies are really hard to get into country sometimes. There's a lot of misappropriation, I guess I would say. And some hospitals just run out of stuff, even to this day. One of my good friends, his name was Schneider, and he went to medical school in Haiti, and then he also did some did some training in both the U.S. and Canada, and he had sickle cell anemia, and he had just graduated, and he was about to start a residency in the U.S. He wanted to be an obstetrician, and he went into a sickle cell crisis and went to the hospital, and they did not have IV fluids, and that is what you give to sort of help stop a sickle cell crisis. So he ended up dying right after he graduated medical school.
Yeah, that was a really sad story that I heard on that. So when you arrived, still the hospitals were in dire need of these supplies, and
Yeah.
I'm sure that the chain was broken, and not repaired, as quickly as anybody would like it to be. But when you walk into a disastrous situation like that, what is the actual, like, if we were an hourglass, what is that squeezing part of the hourglass that keeps those supplies and those things that they need to keep this thing rolling? Because obviously medical assistance or any type of medical needs have to be at the top of the list when a disaster like that happens.
Yeah, so part of the problem is, like, so in Port-au-Prince, obviously that's where the main port is and where most of the supplies that came in. But like the distribution was very difficult. Haiti is very, very mountainous, and and without good roads or good ability to travel. And there's little villages all over the country, and it might be just 30, 40, 50 people live in these small villages, and getting supplies to those places, or even getting medical care into places like that that's probably the squeeze point, in terms of how to get needed supplies to places, is there's just nobody who can make it there.
Yeah. Now the Dominican Republic is just on the other side of the island. So is there a huge difference between, I don't want to say the wealth line, or just in the realm of is Dominican Republic a rich island, or a rich part of the island, and the Haiti is the poor part of the island? Or, I mean, what does the demographics look in between there, and was there cooperation between the Dominican Republic and Haiti as far as being able to help each other?
So the tendency is they don't really like each other. Um, there's a lot of back and forth. A couple years, I think it was about 4 or 5 years ago, there was a big push to kick all of the Haitians out of the Dominican Republic. So there really wasn't much support. When the earthquake occurred, they were allowing medical aid to come through the border, but over the years since then, the border has tightened and tightened and tightened. Yeah, there's really not much cooperation as of right now.
So what was your main mission when you went over to Haiti? Did you have like a focus of what you were trying to do? Because I know you and your son both kind of do something over in Haiti, and I believe,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if he's over there now or something like that. I kind of misconstrued what John was saying, but I know that you guys go back and forth from there often.
Right. Yeah. So he didn't come with me the first time, but he's been with me every time since. And I started taking him when he was 14 years old, I believe. And now he works for a different organization just to get some independence. You know how kids are. So, but he's doing a great job with what he does. But so our main mission was really to, I went into a ministry that had already set up in a place called Kana, which is when the earthquake hit, a lot of people were displaced. And they sort of moved from their villages down to the city. Well, of course, there was not enough work for all those. So for all those people that had moved to the city, and it was a very, very sort of not as bad as City Soleil. That's probably, at one point, it was the most dangerous place in the world, but I think that's designations changed. But we were in Kana, and there was already had opened up a medical mission in that area. So mostly what we were doing was just treating people for illnesses and following up on things like everybody has high blood pressure. There was a lot of musculoskeletal injuries that still were lingering post earthquake, from people being trapped, and they didn't have at that time the things on the ground to get bones set or fixed or replaced, or even mental health trauma, just from having loved ones die and things like that. So basically sitting with someone. And we were fortunate, since they had it already set up, just learning the culture and learning. Every culture deals with mental illness a little bit differently, right? So it's a bit taboo in Haiti to say that, they'll often attribute it to, there's still a lot of voodoo in Haiti. The joke that some Americans will make, which isn't fully true, but like Haiti is 98% Catholic, 2% Protestant, and 100% voodoo. So
Was there a language barrier that you had to overcome when you were there, or is it mostly English speaking community?
No. So yes. So the language that is spoken in the capital is mostly French. That's the language of the elite. The Haitian population that doesn't have as good of access to schools or education speaks Haitian Creole, which is a mixture of the Taino population that live there, some Spanish, some French. So it's very interesting. So some of the words, it's largely French based, but then there's some other things in there. So like one of the ways you would greet someone is sac poulet or sac passé, and sac passé means what's up. And then the answer to that is mat poulet, and that means I'm burning, which makes no sense. But it comes from way back in the Paris, like, what's up? I'm burning. Okay, well, that doesn't sound good. But mat poulet is a translation. It's from a longer sentence, like I'm burning from working for the master in the slave fields.
That brings up an interesting question. Do you have to be multilingual to be a successful physician and be able to do these missionary type of work?
So it helps. I've learned enough medical Creole that I can get by pretty well. But we partner with Haitians. So one of the things when we're doing going into places like this, the place I went to had already trained Haitians to be translators. So they spoke English very well and were able to translate very quickly on the fly. So the reason why we do that, and one is to provide them income for themselves and their families, so we would pay the translators. And two is also just for cultural awareness, because some of the things where I would say, "Oh, do this," it may or may not be a culturally appropriate thing in that area. So they would sort of give us the heads up. And also, like when you're going in, right? Somebody might, just like in America, if a farmer comes in and he wants to be seen right away, in Pennsylvania, like especially if he's a dairy farmer and he shows up, like, so there's something wrong with him. He's not just showing up because he's got the cows to milk and things to do. Like he's sick, like, which is different than maybe like upper class neighborhood where someone comes in and they need to be seen right away because their nose is runny.
Right. He doesn't have a sniffle. There's something wrong with him for sure.
Doc, I need my arms sewn back on, and well, you're right. You're right behind this lady that has a cold sore.
Well, I'll leave it up to the panel to put in their questions, because I'm kind of hogging the questions here. So we'll run it around to the other guys here that might want to say something.
So your general practice then, is that correct? Family medicine or?
Yeah, I do family medicine.
It's interesting. Like I said, I've gone down a path with my wife. She had Graves' disease back in the 90s, and she had the eye problem when the eyes bulged out.
Exophthalmos.
Yep. And so back then they just zapped your thyroid. So they said, here's these pills. Well, you take these. We're going to be out of the room, and you can't see your kid for 2 days, but it's safe. It's just going to kill your thyroid, and which it did, and that caused so many problems. She ended up with obviously no thyroid. And your whole body goes into what are we doing now? So she's on Synthroid,
Right.
And then she had the macular decompression surgeries for the eyes,
Okay.
and they moved her eyes back 9 millimeters in her head. So that's a lot. I mean, that's like the
Yes,
size of your pinky almost. Anyway,
it is. Yes.
that all worked. There was 5 surgeries to do that. It's a miracle of modern medicine what they did to that was just an incredible thing to watch happen. But she's now she had a weight problem, massive weight problem, and nothing that she did would work. The keto worked, but it was unsustainable for her. Just it was not the kind of diet that she could keep up. But she lost 40 or 50 pounds doing that and gained it back when couldn't do the keto anymore. It just didn't work for her. And so now she's been on Mounjaro now for the last 2 years, and she's lost a little over 100 pounds, a couple pounds at a time, slowly. And that seems to have helped her quite a bit, at least with the weight loss part of things. Are you seeing, there's the Mounjaro, and everyone's talking about all these drugs now that are working and doing things. What are you seeing with that line of drugs? As a name for them, I can't remember, but this
GLP-1 inhibitors.
Yeah. So are you seeing good results, bad results, a little bit of both, or I mean, with a general family practice, I'd imagine there's some of your patients must be on that. That's such a popular thing right now.
It is a very popular thing right now. In general, there's always ideally. So your wife is a unique case, obviously, because
And she was
having an
diabetic
underlying-
too. Sorry, that I forgot to add that in. She had type 2 diabetes,
Sure.
which is the only
Yeah.
reason they could give her this drug, because it was actually treatment for the diabetes, not the weight loss. They said you
Right.
might lose some weight as a side effect, but this should take your A1C down.
Yes. So they work really well for diabetics. I mean, there's been other medications similar to those. Saxenda was one, which was also an injection,
Yep.
and that's been around for a while. Before these newer ones came out, like Trulicity and Mounjaro, which there's other names when they go into the weight loss round. Zepbound is Mounjaro, and Trulicity. Ozempic is Wegovy. So I have seen good results. Obviously, there is some risk with taking them. There's concern for pancreatic cancers, and I think, and that's one of the big ones, and some thyroid stuff as well. So that being said, it's definitely a tool in the arsenal. But I think one of those things is also again, your wife is a little different because of her past medical history. So um, treatment really needs to be individualized. But one of the things that I've found is I have a patient who weighs 600 pounds, and his ability to exercise just is non-existent, right? So for him, it's a life-saving thing because it's going to be able to get him down. And sometimes when you get that big, it's an interesting thing. Like, so your drive switches, and you get what's called central hypoxia or central sleep apnea, where your drive switches from CO2 dependent to oxygen dependent. It's also called Pickwickian syndrome. If you remember Charles Dickens and the Pickwick character, he was morbidly obese, and that's where that term comes from. But so for him, it's life saving. For people who have a BMI of obviously one of the knocks is like people are just taking it so that they can eat whatever they want and lose once, and you see that more in people who have to look good for their income, say maybe Hollywood.
Yeah.
So right now there's, a lot of supply issues. It's getting a little bit better. That makes it challenging to give those medicines to people who actually need them for things like diabetic control. With them, I've seen really good success in terms of getting patients, especially type 2 patients who are obese, off of insulin. So not that there's some people have to be on insulin, especially if you're a type 1 diabetic, but for these patients that tried everything they could. And then the other thing is, it builds on each other. So they start losing a little bit of weight. Then you can start talking about exercise. Maybe they couldn't exercise just because they were miserable. They couldn't
Right,
move. Their
right.
hips hurt, their back hurt. Everything hurts when you're a certain size.
Knees,
And so
ankles, everything.
getting some of the weight off then allows them to move, and then hopefully eventually the transition will be okay. You don't need it anymore now that you can exercise and now that you can do that stuff.
And I
So-
bring this up because you mentioned something that I agree with wholly, is that any kind of treatment for anything needs to be personalized because everyone's a little bit different. It seems to me that the medical most medical practices, like when we'd go in there and we'd have a problem, the whole story of, hey, I've got an interesting or a unique situation here, it goes over so many doctors' heads. And they don't know. Well, we went to the Mayo Clinic with this weight loss thing because she was working out and doing all of the things. She was trying to eat healthy, which is doing a pretty good job. She was working out 6 days a week, and I went with her, and I couldn't do the workout she was doing. And this is when she was near 300 pounds,
Wow.
270, 280. And I couldn't do the workout that she was doing. So I'm like, all right, it's not that you're not doing what but none of the weight would come off. And we finally found a doctor that says, well, wait a minute, let's look at everything here, your whole life and everything up to here, your genetics, your family history. And he's like, you can work out and eat as well as you want, and you're only going to lose a few pounds every once in a while, and you're going to gain it back because your body is not, they figured out that what they said is your body is basically in crisis mode and thinks it needs to, because of the thyroid thing, you're holding on to all the food and the fats and the sugars on the food because it thinks it's in crisis mode because your thyroid's shot. And all the Synthroid in the world's not going to change that. We need to find another way. So she tried the Sexianda and those kind of things, and most of those other ones she couldn't tolerate. It made her horribly nauseous, and she just couldn't tolerate it. And when we finally, and they're like, well, you can try this other thing, but you're not diabetic. And so, it was like she finally got to be diabetic because that was inevitable. She couldn't lose the weight. She's 300 pounds, 5'10", and now she's not. Her A1C's back below diabetic 2 level. And the doctors that worked with her that were fantastic were the ones that just said, look, once you're on this stuff, they're going to make you jump through all the hoops to try and get it. They're like, you have to try this and this and this. She's like, I already did. And we had a doctor. He's like, nowhere in any of this are they saying how long you have to try it. Just go get the prescription and then come back to me in a week and say, this isn't working. This isn't working. And then within 3 weeks, we were able to go through all of the other drugs that she had already tried 5 different times, over the course of the last 15 years. But a doctor that looks a little bit outside the box is so refreshing, and so having you on and talking to you about this kind of stuff is just exciting to me because I've watched it happen where you're like, when I go in, it's like, here you have a cold, here's some penicillin for your infection of your eye or whatever it is. It's oh, you broke your finger, here now it's set. I'm pretty solid when it comes to that stuff, and they figure it out and it's great. So I'm the average patient, but whenever there's something outside the realm of, I don't know if it's, people tell you, oh, it's the drug companies are trying to get the doctors. I don't buy that. But, what do you see in the field among your peers when it comes to, something that's outside of the norm? Do you see that a lot, or is that not as much?
I mean, sure. So common things are common, and when you hear hoofbeats, it's usually a horse, not a zebra. That's sort of like one of those things but the uncommon,
that's great,
right? So one of the uncommon, when we get uncommon things, like a lot of times, one of the benefits of having a electronic medical record is we have this thing called secure chat, where if I'm thinking, I have an idea, but I want to run this past my friend who's a rheumatologist or endocrinologist or whatever. So I'll just message them on secure chat. They'll look at the chart and give me back. And actually, there's even something on the system that we use is Epic, where you can really crowdsource this. So if you have a challenging case, you put it out to everywhere. Now, the problem, obviously, with all of this, and especially in modern medicine, is the amount of time you get to spend with your physician.
Yeah.
And different organizations will have it in different time slots. So I might have 15 minutes. If I'm lucky, I'll have 40 minutes. And so it's just not enough time. So most physicians spend many, many hours outside of the clinic trying to review it. But again, 15 minutes. I mean, if you do that every week, it's you'll get to know the patient better. But I mean, what patient wants to come in and have to pay a copay every week or just to get up? So I tend to take as much time as I feel is necessary to see the patient, because if you don't talk to them, I mean, it could be as little as something, and you never know. One of the best classes I ever had in medical school that taught me a lot was we did a class on Sherlock Holmes, and all the clues are there, you just have to put them together. But
Right.
it takes experience. It takes, when I was a baby doc and just out of my residency, I was like, oh, I know everything. I knew nothing. Right. It really takes time to learn all that stuff in pieces. Like, what do their hands look like? What do their fingernails look like? What does their face look like? Who are they living with? What do they do for a living? Like, all of that plays a role into your health, your mental status, your well-being, how they grow up. All that kind of plays into a role of their ability or inability to do what you ask them. And if you don't ask the questions, like I'm a pretty much a straight shooter. I think I went off topic here a little bit, but
No,
I really
No,
love,
you're spot on. You're exactly what I was.
I mean,
Yeah.
I love learning about my patients. So I had this patient, and again, this was years ago, and this guy came in, and I started getting really pissed off at him because he'd never do anything. I said, this guy drank a case of beer a day. And he'd come in, he's not taking his best, blood pressure's over there. And I said, it's okay to curse on here, right, Bruce?
Oh yeah, absolutely,
Right.
absolutely.
So I was like, I don't know why the fuck you come to see me. Like, you don't do anything I tell. I just said this to him because I was
Yeah.
finally had it. And he
Right.
kind of looked at me, and during it, we'd talk about other stuff because he liked talking about hunting and fishing and stuff, which I did too. And he goes, you know what, Doc? I just like talking to you, and maybe one day I'll listen to you. I said, so fine. So you come in here, we'll talk hunting and fishing, and we'll just go from there. And what I learned was, by the end of the time, I had moved on. He was down to, he wasn't perfect, but he was down to 2 beers a day, and he was taking his medicine, his blood pressure controls. And what he needed was someone to listen to him. And I'm not any better or worse than any other doctor out there, I don't think. But like, I mean, I think one of the things you learn is sometimes people just need your time and your attention. And
Yeah.
Yes.
this might be the only place where they hear that. You might be
found
the
that
only
very
person who
prevalent.
listens to them.
Yeah. I found that very prevalent on my last physical, which was only about 3 weeks ago. And I wasn't really turned on about this doctor that I had. I hadn't seen him before. And last time I saw him was before COVID. So it was a good 3 years before I got to see him. And I was surprised that he hung around. So I'm like, okay, cool. Well, I had made a list of, I had been taking my blood pressure for last year, keeping track of all kinds of things, and then writing down a list of things that I thought were wrong with me, and whatever. And I actually sat him down. We had a good 45-minute chat. I mean, he sat down there and all he wanted to do was listen. And I'm going like, and I don't want to, I was just sitting there, giving the riot act. I don't want to do this. I don't want to do that. Here's what I've got. Here's, this is, I'm worried about this. I'm worried about this. I'm worried about all these things. And he just kind of sat me down, and he's just sitting there, and he's taking notes, and, kind of like a, like a psychiatrist, but, no, he was taking good notes, and at the end of when I stopped chatting with him, he was just going, okay, well, let's take a look at what you've got going on. And he goes like, I'm really surprised that you took your blood pressure for so long. He said, let me take a look at that, so he's taking a look at that, and he's all like, whatever, and he goes like, it's not too bad, but he goes like, I get that. What do they call that? The white robe stress. So I'm really high when I go up there. Yeah. and so, I had another appointment, a phone call appointment with him like a week later, after he gave me a pamphlet that said, this is how you take your blood pressure. This is how you do it. This is when you do it. This is what not to do. Here's what to do. And luckily, thank God, my blood pressure is somewhat under control. So we'll see. Sometimes it goes up, but a lot of times it's right there where it's supposed to be. And I guess that brings me to my question. With the pharmaceutical industry as it is right now, where medicines are available for just about anything you have, we're all old enough here in the panel to know when there wasn't any of these pharmaceutical commercials that were out, and just plastered. I mean, you see one 2-3 times every half hour, if not more. Is it helping, or is it not helping your patients or the medical community to have something like that going on?
So I think that splits probably into two camps. I mean, I think there's a lot with that. So one is the pharmaceutical companies are out to make money, and there's nothing wrong with making money, but sometimes they'll make something that is not pathologic and create a need for their medication where maybe it wasn't necessary per se. So I'm trying to think of a good example for that.
Well, I guess what I'm really trying to say is that when they come out with these advertisements, and then you've got to listen at the end of them where they say, "Here's all the side effects," and you're going, "Why in the hell would I take something with those kind of side effects?" My wife she screams at the TV about it. So I mean, that's where we're at with this. You can go on with your answer that you were going to give, but I mean, that's one of the concerns that I see when we're watching.
I want to be happy like them on the TV. I want to be happy. I want to be happy to have uncontrollable explosive diarrhea 24/7. Yes, I want that.
I thought you were going to go with the bathtubs with a couple holding hands and the Cialis stuff.
That'd be funny too. Yes, yeah, that'd be fun too.
Yeah. So the side effects are a whole thing, but like if you pick up a bottle of aspirin, one of the number one side effects listed on a bottle of aspirin is headache. Yeah. Right. So they have to list absolutely everything, even if it was only one person that was on there. And that's obviously for their legal protection, right? So they don't get sued because something happened. Every year there's medicines that are removed because they'll, in spite of how long the trials are, there's always usually a couple medicines that get approved and then end up doing more harm than good. Yes.
Speaking of that one, there was one medication that I took that was great for me. It's called Belviq. Have you heard of it?
I have. I can't. It was that. Yeah, that was not around for very long.
No, it was not, because it caused cancer in patients, but it worked wonders for me because I have a Hulk-sized appetite. If I could ever get that under control, I would be skinny again. But that drug was the only drug that I actually liked that actually worked to control my appetite. Yeah. And then I was sad when it was removed because it was approved only for a very short time, and then it was taken off the market again. I'm like, what the living hell?
Yeah, that happens not infrequently. So in terms of like the direct to consumer advertising, I mean, ideally, since I lean libertarian, like we wouldn't be the gatekeepers of your access to pills, right? They would be in a pharmacy. You'd be able to have a conversation with your pharmacist and then do it. And so the reason that I would prefer such a system like that is, you would want to make sure that these medicines actually do what they want and they're safe, because that puts the liability back on the pharmaceutical manufacturer and not the liability on the physician prescribing it, right?
Right.
So, your medicines are available at the pharmacy. Have the conversation with the pharmacist and then put it in your hands, and then come in and talk to me and say, hey, do you think this is right for me? What's your take on it? But that's not the way it is. So now you have this advertising and people are coming in seeing this drug that does all these amazing things, and it might not be the right one for them, and then convincing them, maybe not that, or maybe you don't even need a medicine. Maybe you could do this thing or that thing to try and improve it. There's like certain incontinence medicines, right? Well, there's other treatments for like incontinence in both men and women, like pelvic floor therapy. There's stimulation. There's non-medical treatments for some things, and not everything has to be given a pill. I mean, one of my favorite things to do is to take people off pills. So if you look at like a lot of my patients who are, above 50, especially above 60, can be on like 15, 20, 20 different drugs. You have no idea Yeah, well, you have no idea what's going on with that many pharmaceuticals in your body. You just don't know what's going on. I mean, they've done studies with what they call polypharmacy, but most of those studies are with 3 medications. Once you get on above like 5, 10, who knows what's going on?
Mm-hmm.
You want to move to
So,
Minnesota?
yeah, sure. It's a little cold there. You can come to Pennsylvania. We're still kind of cold, but not Minnesota cold.
Sorry to cut you off, but yeah, I would love to have you as a doctor then.
Oh, well, thank
Yeah.
you.
So we just went through the COVID pandemic, and a lot of things were said about the WHO, about the NIC, about all this stuff that people said, government didn't help itself and the people didn't help themselves either. Because I'm going to take part of the blame, as being a consumer of medical treatment, and the only medical treatment that I received during the pandemic was I had an emergency appendectomy. I had not been vaccinated at the time, but they were not going to do the whole thing without being vaccinated.
Sure.
But so when the whole COVID crisis came about, and all the doubt with the WHO and the medical profession came apparent, how much is that damaging health with patients and people now that kind of give you the side eye when they're talking about, do I really need this? Do I really need, is this on the up and up? And I think a lot of things got damaged, and a lot of trust got damaged in between the doctor-patient relationship. And how you dealing with that?
Uh, Again, I think I'm very fortunate because I've lived here for a while, and most of the people know me. I mean, it's an interesting mix of patients I have, because there's 2 colleges close by, and those tend to lean more the left side. But then, we also have the War College here in Carlisle, and the Army War College, and then there's also like a ton of farmers, and then I guess I'm the doctor to a lot of the Earth Mothers, which are the ones that may lean left on a lot of their beliefs, but also are mostly non-vaccinators. So for me, I don't think I fault as much, because a lot of these people I've known for years at this point, and they feel comfortable. So I get dinged because in our system, I think I have the lowest vaccination rate of any provider, because a lot of the parents don't want it, and a lot of the local primary cares will dismiss patients from their practice if they don't vaccinate their kids. And you might have heard me say this on John's show, and I like, even if for the most part, I think a COVID vaccine is a different story, but a lot of these vaccines have been around for a long time, and they have good things. But like, why would I kick a kid out? How in the way does that build a patient-doctor trust? I'm like, oh, you're a bad person. You're not vaccinating your child. Like, so if I kick them out of the practice, what's going to happen? They're automatically not going to trust medical doctors. You know what I mean? So
Right.
it takes time, and I've had plenty of patients. I'm like, look, like a good one is chicken pox, right? A lot of people, chicken pox is not so bad. You get it when you're a kid, no worries. But let's say, chicken pox can be deadly if you get it as an adult. Like, you can end up in the ICU with a very severe case. So they'll get to be like mid teenagers, early adulthood. I'm like, maybe you ought to consider doing this now. And they're like, yeah, what the heck? They're fine now. Right.
Yeah, to clear up anything,
So,
I got vaccinated before my appendectomy, but I did that for my job. But the premise that I was trying to get to is that they weren't going to do the operation unless I was vaccinated. So
and I think that's awful, So I mean, again, going back to medical ethics, like, one of the big tenets, and everybody weighs them differently, but for me, it's autonomy. Like, it's your body. Like, I can tell you things, and I can make recommendations, but like, you shouldn't be forced to have something done to your body that you don't want to have done to your body.
Yeah. I just like I said, again, Jason had posted something in our private chat this weekend that said that California is going back to mask mandates for the medical community and the clinics and skilled nursing homes on November 1st, and it might end in March and it might end in April. But I mean, I don't know how you feel about it. I got my own feelings about masks and stuff like that. I didn't wear one, unless I really, really had to wear one. I didn't wear one. I have a mom that's in skilled nursing care now, so I'm going to have to either say, Mom, I'll meet you outside or something like that. I just really have a problem with it, as being a small L libertarian, as you would say. And it's just one of those things that the medical community has just got to be taking a beating over this. I mean, especially when in here, and I'm sure that you know this, is that most medical facilities now are just clinics. I mean, I've had my medical insurance now for going on 10, probably 12 years. I've had 4 different primary care doctors. Like I said, this last one I've had for 4 years now, so I'm really happy with that. That at least he's seen me more than one time. But for the most part, it's got to be challenging out there for this.
Yeah, the mask thing drives me nuts. I mean, I have a question for you. Do you have to wear eye protection?
No.
I mean, you have gloves, right? Where do viruses come in?
Usually, all the orifices like eyes, nose, ears, throat.
Right, and which orifice does not have natural protection? It's your eyes,
Your
right?
eyes.
And we're constantly touching. So why masks, not eye protection, right? So in the hospital, you had to do both, obviously, but it makes no sense if you're worried about community spread. Like, I'm not trying to give anybody ideas. Sorry if somebody hears this like, but like, I mean, like the masks are like, they're not fitted, they're blowing out.
Oh, they don't work,
The air's going everywhere. You cough,
do not
that's
work.
not stopping that particle. And I remember in Facebook, it would drive me nuts. People would say, look, masks work. And they'd show a petri dish of them coughing. I'm like, dude, that's bacteria. That's not a virus. Like, yeah, it can stop. Bacteria are bigger than viruses,
Yeah.
Okay, so the mask is catching the bacteria. It's not catching that virus. Like, and you can't grow viruses on petri dish cultures anyway. Like, there's a special culture you have to use. Like, what are you doing?
Exactly.
Like, Isaac,
Yeah.
When up here in the winter time, this is what I always notice. I told people, I'm like, see that when all the breath that's coming through your mask, each one of those droplets of water is literally over 100 times bigger than the coronavirus. So
Right.
you could have 100 coronaviruses coming through your mask and every drop of that. I used to do custom painting and automotive painting and stuff like that. So I'm an expert on not getting shit into your face that you don't want in your face.
Yeah.
And like your beard there, you can't have that. You have to shave your face clean to get a good seal around in a respirator. And
Right.
I can be in a room that I couldn't see from one end of the car to the other in a spray booth because there's so much overspray, and you got a hazmat suit on, stuff like that. But that respirator, as soon as you could smell any of the paint that you were spraying, you had to get out of there right away and change your filters and stuff because you knew they were going bad. So when this whole thing happened, and I've also got a condition where they said it was labyrinthitis, but I think it's something else. It's basically vertigo. So if I wear a mask for a long time and walk around doing anything strenuous, like if I'm walking around the store or something like that,
Get dizzy.
I get dizzy. So what I would tell people in Minnesota, they got to be Gestapos about this because of Governor Walz was an absolute Gestapo about it. And they said, hey, if you have a medical condition, it's okay. You won't.
And I was able to use that too. Because I had to prove this to my doctor that wearing a mask actually increases my blood pressure because it's hard for me to breathe.
Yeah.
So my blood pressure goes up, and he didn't believe me. And I had to prove it to him that it actually does. And so I was able to work on the mask mandate because it increases my blood pressure, and that's a medical condition.
But the rest of the people that were around you in the store didn't give a shit about your medical condition.
No, they don't.
Because of what the governor did, scaring the shit out of everybody.
Yep.
Right.
It was terrible. And I told one store owner, I walked into the store and he's like, sir, you got to wear a mask. I'm like, are you going to throw me out? I said, I'm going to go back here. I'm going to buy that, and that. And I'm going to come in. I'll go to the self-checkout and be gone. well, you really should be wearing a mask. I'm like, well, here's what's going to happen. If I wear a mask, I'm going to walk around. I'm still going to buy this stuff. Unless you're telling me to leave, then I'll leave. But I'll have to buy this stuff. And then you're going to be dealing with someone passed out on the floor because I have a medical condition. I'll probably pass out. And then you're going to have a person passed out on the floor with a loaded gun. Now what are you going to do? Wait, what? All right, you're just going to get your stuff and go? I'm like, that's all I asked, sir. And I never had a problem with him afterwards. He's just like, hey, you doing, Mr. Madden? I'm like, good. You understand. But Best Buy, some of these other places were crazy. My daughter was going through IVF treatment at the time, and the doctors that were doing the IVF treatment would not let her husband in the office with her when they were discussing some of the how they're going to do this. And she's like, I sleep with him, right? So whatever kind of voodoo germs are on him are all over me. And they're like, we're sorry, but this is our policy. Policies made no sense. And my aunt was 100 years old. She got COVID, kicked its ass. And but she lived in a home up in New Hampshire where they just locked it down. And then they started funneling in people from everywhere. Anyone that got sick had to go here. And so my cousin would, she breeds boards horses, so she'd ride horses over, and so the elderly people could see the horse and pet the horse and do that. It was awesome therapy for them. And so now it came down to she was riding the horse around the building, and everyone's pressed up against the window like this, looking at the horse, waving and stuff. I'm like, it was the saddest thing you ever saw, and for absolute no reason. I'm like, my aunt's 100 years old. If she wants to go out and pet the horse, let her go out and pet the horse. If she drops dead from petting the horse because she sneezed, it was her last breath was a breath of happiness, and no one saw that. Or maybe they did and just didn't care. I don't know. It's a weird time.
We had a similar situation. My wife's grandfather was 103. He lived in his own house till he was 100 and drove till he was 100 years old.
Cool.
Finally got sick enough. He went into a home. Amazing man. Couldn't understand tech, so they shut it down. He's in this nursing home now. We got him an iPad, or she got him an iPad, so we could call. He got frustrated with it, wouldn't use it, and he died that summer.
Yeah.
And it was just, I did get to say goodbye.
There's a lot of those bad stories out there, man. And it's just a shame that COVID and everything that went along with it just kind of added to the lunacy of what we're seeing now. I mean, I really kind of, what's happening in our government, in our society now, I place the blame a lot on this pandemic and how it's divided people. I mean, the government can be one thing, but the scariness and the hysteria over the pandemic really kind of put a big wall in between that, the ones that believed it all and the ones that believed some of it, and some of us that didn't believe it all. I don't know how much the vaccine, helped me. I took the first 2 shots, never took another shot before. After that, I've had people and friends of mine who have taken all the shots, have gotten COVID several freaking times. I don't get it. Like I said, I just kind of threw the stuff away. I got my doctor now saying like, well, you really need to come back in and at least get your flu shot and get your last what is it, the shingle shot. So
yeah.
I took my shingle shot and my flu shot at the same time, like 5 years ago, and it was not a pleasant experience.
I don't do flu shots, that's for sure.
Yeah.
And it was not a pleasant experience. So I'm really hesitant now, being 64 years old. Now they're saying, well, we got this special shot for you for the flu. And
the high dose.
Yeah. And I'm just going like, I don't know. I'm pretty healthy. I eat pretty good. I get a lot of vitamin D. I'm out. You can see I'm from California. I get out in the sun. I'm more darker than these white guys here, but but no, I mean, I really do. I eat healthy. I think my blood pressure is great and stuff like that. So I really feel, I mean, my body, you're the one that feels your body, and you're the one that lives in your body. So how much do you keep that into account when you're seeing a patient and doing something like this, and worried about this whole COVID thing and how that affected everybody?
how much do I keep what in account exactly? Like the
I mean, the
vaccine?
account of somebody who feels like if I was to come in and say, "Hey, man, I really feel great. You got the labs back. You said, "Gee, everything seems good," And then there's some patients that they come in, they don't feel great, but all their labs are great, and maybe it's depression, maybe it's something else. I mean, how much stock do you take? How deep do you kind of look into somebody and go like, okay, maybe this guy's just like hypochondriac or things like that? And how much do you think COVID really took and aimed at that person to where they're at? Is there that?
COVID, it has, other people have said it, but it's going to be studied forever, from what went right, what went wrong, what should we have done, what shouldn't we have done. I really sort of feel like Dr. Bhattacharya really kind of had it right. It's a risk reward, and really we should be doing that in anything in medicine. All right. Whether it's the medication you take, or like there's the medicine Paxlovid, right? If you would come down with COVID, you could take Paxlovid. Well, there was just a recent study saying the number needed to treat for Paxlovid is you need to treat 100 people to have one person that medicine helped, right? Well, that medicine has side effects, especially if you're on other medicines, like some certain cholesterol medicines, certain diabetic medicines. It could cause some pretty bad things to happen inside your body. You can get kidney failure and stuff like that from it. But again, it's a risk reward. If you're a high risk patient who, if getting COVID for you could be a death sentence, maybe it's worth that risk. But if you don't take that into account and just make a blanket same thing for the vaccines, right? Like, okay, if you're super high risk, all right, maybe there's a new vaccine we didn't know. Okay, possibly, maybe it'll do you some good, but maybe it won't. If you're young and healthy, do you really need that vaccine? They'll talk about herd immunity, which in some instances that's great. Like let's say smallpox. All right, herd immunity is good, or polio, or things like that. You get it. These are long-standing vaccines that have been around a long time, and obviously, there are definitely, like I said, I'm not kicking anyone who doesn't vaccinate out of my practice, but there's probably some better arguments, but there also has to be nuance, and I think we lost a lot of the nuance. It was either
Yep.
there's just no nuance and no grace. Like, we
Right,
have to
right,
extend
exactly.
grace to each other. Like, my job is to, I love my patients. I love being a doctor. I'm not, if a patient doesn't want to do something, like, let's say, colonoscopy, you should get a colonoscopy. It'll help. They just take a look. Well, sometimes bad things happen. They might have had a bad experience, a relative that's had a bad experience. They're not doing it no matter what you say. All right, that's fine. You don't have to do it. We just lose that nuance. And then, like, I've seen just awful things from it. And then, then there's also the financial aspect to it. Definitely there are organizations, ours is one of them, where you can get a bonus if you have so many percentage of your patients vaccinated. That's why I kind of made a joke earlier, where like I'm the lowest one in this entire system, because they all come to me.
I'm Serpico.
Yeah, it's I don't know. So, like, I don't need your money that bad.
Yeah. Ryan, we're coming to the end of this first hour of this podcast, and we want to keep you on, so we're going to do some bonus content on the other side. But if there's any last things that you'd like to say to at least the first hour people, go ahead and plug yourself, and then we will end this show, and then we will begin the second show, which will be just a continuation of this show. So if there's something you want to say to the people right now, give yourself a plug or anything that you've got. I'll be more than happy to go ahead and post that down into the show notes for them to access when they hear this, either on the video podcast or on the audio podcast, which will drop tomorrow.
Sure. I guess my plug would be, we should all try and have a little bit of grace and kindness towards each other, no matter where we stand or what we believe. And when we get into these fights and stuff, it just gets awful. And I think COVID really destroyed a lot of sort of the social fabric of this country, and tore it asunder. And so, like, just be kind and have some grace. And I guess the other thing I would plug, if anybody's ever interested in learning about Haiti, I am working on my socials right now. I just have Facebook, and I just joined Twitter. So we're working on that. so Haiti, and then eventually I'm going to be starting my own life coaching business for um, uh, basically focusing on how to create a legacy and how to be in the best health you can.
Yeah, good. Yeah, we're going to talk about that on the other side. And I just want to thank
Awesome.
you, Ryan, for being here, and my co-host for being so supportive of you and the show, because without them,
Thank you.
I'm speechless because I can't do a show by myself. But in any case, man, we want to make sure that anybody who is interested, we're going to do some more bonus content, which will land next week on next Sunday on the show, so we can continue this conversation. And I just want to thank you for being here, Ryan, and Ken. Thank you, Jason. Thank you, and we will see you guys next week on another edition of the Weather Report. Have a good one. See ya.
Bye.